So I think things just take me a really long time, transitions, of course, something that I didn't even think was a problem until I started reading about ADHD. And I was like, oh, well, I've got that. And then I really notice how I have these blind spots where I'm like, where did the time go? Moving from one thing to the other, like it's the time it takes me to walk there, but it's the time it takes me to set up and pack up and making sure I have everything. I've got to catch the bus to go there. And it's just like, I pack in so much time for transitions that it feeds into my productivity time. It's just, I can't function like that as a graduate student. Like, it's just not sustainable.
ADHD Rewired, episode 311. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Angela O. Suspecting you might have ADHD and having to wait months for your evaluation can be a real challenge. Angela is trying to cope with this while trying to balance work, school, and family life, and is in the process of applying to be a doctoral student. On top of that, she's been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and she's struggled with migraines throughout her entire life and has a history of developmental trauma. Yet Angela has no plans to stop learning or growing or contributing. She is a very resilient person, and I'm very happy to have her on the podcast. Angela, I'm glad you're here. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you have been, I think you reached out to me a couple months ago when you first suspected that you might have ADHD. And I think it was, how do you deal with the waiting when you're trying to get that evaluation?
Yes. I went on a deep dive reading into things. I think I had asked if you put out a podcast about waiting for an evaluation.
And I think my response was no, so let's do one.
Exactly.
So what's been hard? So I know you said that just this week you had an intake and they did kind of a history, but you haven't done the sort of the deeper sort of part of the evaluation yet.
Yeah, that's correct. I tried to get an appointment much earlier. I've been waiting since I think October for this, and it's like a 3-part series. So I did the first one last week, which was a intake, going through my history, and then this Thursday I will do a battery of cognitive testing. And then the third one is like a response to it, or I forgot what they call it. Kind of just giving you the feedback.
Okay. And what was it that triggered your wondering if you might have ADHD?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I'll go to the most recent thing and maybe we'll pedal back.
Okay.
So I have 2 kids and they're in kindergarten and 2nd grade. I'm also finishing my undergraduate degree, which is something we'll probably go into during this conversation. So I'm watching my 5-year-old, and he's just, people call him all boy, which irks me. I mean, he's just all over the place. He's very animated. He's like a cartoon child. And I was having this conversation with my husband at the dinner table, telling him my 5-year-old hey, like, let's just sit down. We're having a meal. If you show us that you can sit down at our dinner table, like, we'll be more likely to go out once in a while. And he was like, oh, I got to get this one thing. And he's just bouncing back and forth. And I looked to my husband and I'm like, you know what? I was like that. He'll grow out of it. You know, the joke that my family still likes to tell is when I was a kid, I would have to get up from the dinner table, do a couple cartwheels, come back and have a bite. And I could not sit down for a meal. So ADHD is one of those things that was joked about with me. It was never.
And did they call it ADHD, like your parents?
I think it was like, oh, that you're so ADD.
Okay.
My dad is very much, you know, kind of all the checkpoints on the hyperactive side.
Okay.
It's like, oh, you're just like your dad kind of comments. So seeing it in my son made me think, well, maybe there's something to this. And I think that's what really spurred me looking into it. And then, of course, seeing that it's hereditary and just this flash of things in my history that make me think, wow, this is kind of a real thing. I should look into this. And then there's a rabbit hole and a whole bunch of things that are around that. Googling
your symptoms and then finding other things. So, so you say that your dad, I think, probably had ADHD. You also said, and when we first talked, that your family didn't really believe in doctors.
Yeah. I have suffered from migraines my whole life. My earliest memory of it was when I was 5. I was at a B-52s concert, and
B-52s and you're 5.
Yeah,
well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was in the 90s. And I remember I was horribly sick. I have a horrible pounding headache, and it's that combination of nausea, just pounding, throbbing pain. That was my first real memory because I was excited for the B-52s. But it's just one of those things that I was always in the nurse's office. Even if I didn't have a full migraine, I would have headaches frequently. My stomach would be upset frequently. School was very challenging for me sensory-wise. And I feel like not having trust in doctors from my parents' side really debilitated my ability to be well, have proper treatment. And it wasn't until just a couple years ago that I found a medication that worked for my migraines that was an absolute game changer.
What was that medication, if I can ask?
So for migraines, the acute treatment is called a triptan. And there's different types. I tried a sumatriptan, I think it's called, forgetting the name of the brand name, but, and it didn't have a good result. I would have, headaches that would last more than 24 hours if I were to take it. But the one I have now is called zomatriptan, and I will take that the first signs of a migraine. Even when I'm having weird sensory issues or a sinking sensation.
Can you describe those? Both the sensory issues and also the sinking sensation?
Yeah. In general, I have sensory sensitivities, so light and sound and taste and smells. Whether I don't have a very good filter system for those things or not, I don't know what the reason is, but I feel things very deeply, and I'm very sensitive to those things to the point where it's overwhelming. And when I have those beginning signs of a migraine, it's like I'm just irritable emotionally. I'm sensitive. I'll choose my clothes very deliberately. I'll wear sunglasses. I will try to avoid just sensory triggers. And then I'll get this when I describe a gripping sensations, that's when I've learned, don't talk myself out of it. No denial. It's going to happen. It's like a slow moving train.
You say a gripping sensation. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So for me, it's more on my left side, which is pretty common. So
Of your head or your face?
Yes. So around my jaw, my left eyebrow, down the side of my left neck, my shoulder, I'll feel just tight and tense and like I need to create space. I'll have this overlap between fibromyalgia symptoms and migraine symptoms where I'll have like these tense areas of muscle and it'll just be a tension, like a trigger point that I'll be tempted to relieve through like, massaging my shoulder. And sometimes that will just trigger nausea. And then it's this cascading effect where it just runs away from me. And that sinking sensation, it feels almost gravitational where like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe.
Is it like vertigo?
No, my sense of balance is fine. But if it progresses, like this past Friday, I woke up with a migraine and, once the symptoms get to a certain point, they're harder to relieve. So I will have a throbbing headache. I will hunch over. I have to do a series of steps. So I need to get coffee. I need to eat something that I'm throwing up. And I will walk with my hands on the counter and on a chair, like hunched over, like I'm on a boat or something. It's not a balance. It's more like I'm going through space and I'm trying to get to where the coffee is. And I have to get something in my stomach. Otherwise the nauseous cycle will just last through the afternoon. And yeah, it's a whole thing. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'm just thinking about like all of that on top of, potentially ADHD. I mean, ADHD sounds like a cakewalk compared to what you're dealing. I mean, and I find that, so you're finishing up your undergrad right now, right? And you're getting in psychology. Is that right?
Yes.
And you're pursuing a doctoral program after this.
In research. Yeah. Okay.
When you can't anticipate when you're going to be having these flare-ups, tell me what your thought process is. What is it that like gets you up and keeps you moving forward when out of nowhere, one of these flare-ups can just completely just knock you out?
Yeah. I am incredibly motivated. I do not have a problem with that. I am so persistent. There's things I want to do, and I feel like I have dealt with migraines and fibromyalgia for so many years that I just refuse to let it keep me from doing the things I want to do. But it does, and that's the most frustrating thing. Before I returned back to school, I had a number of years that I was out of the university. I had to leave the university because my migraines became chronic. I was taking a medication that was prescribed to me because I have such bad nausea. It was dissolving, and it was called Maxalt. And I think they've changed it since then, but like 10 years ago, however long ago this was, it had a sweetener called aspartame, which if anybody's familiar
can cause
with
migraines, right?
Yeah. Funny thing. And I had multiple, I'm laughing about this. I have multiple providers, say, well, the Maxalt's the best thing because your nausea is so bad. You got to keep the medication down. And then it would just cause more. It was awful. I had, chronic migraines, like 15 a month or so.
Oh my gosh. So basically every other day you're having a migraine.
I could not function. I didn't have accommodations. And so I sought some help from disability services because it was disabling. And on top of that, I changed my major a few times and I had a packed schedule, and trying to just fulfill the requirements to finish my degree was one thing. Deciding on what major was one thing. And I had these other issues that were just causing me to go into shutdown mode.
Understandably.
Yeah.
So you said you're highly motivated. When it feels like you keep pushing forward and you're getting like tripped and kicked and beat down while you're moving forward, what do you think is driving this just grit, this tenacious grit?
I don't know. The worst feeling is to feel useless. I feel like I've always wanted to complete my, at least my undergrad education. I started off in one field that, long story short, wasn't a good fit.
What was the field?
I was in music. And
there is no shame that you being in music, as like your eyes look down to the ground. Like, I was in music.
Well, I have a weird relationship with it, I guess. From a really, really young age, I was identified as talented. And
musically, or are you talking about like gifted and talented?
I mean, at the time, it was musically talented or gifted. I don't know. So I, at a really early age, was like advanced musically. So I played piano and I started taking lessons when I was like 6 or something. And then I just like breezed through the material, and then it was like, oh, she should, do competitions, or, this is what she's good at. This is what she should do. A lot of shoulds. And I loved music. I just didn't like the classical training. I feel like it was something that was
and rigid.
Oh yeah. I feel like it was something that was very unique to me, that was mine. And it was kind of brought into this place of being shaped and molded. And this is the right way to do it. The way you're doing it isn't proper. And then that quickly went into, she can sing. And when I was like 12 or 13, I started classical voice lessons, which just was training me into perfectionism. The way you sing your A vowel, get that Chicago A out of there. It was something that developed into, it wasn't mine anymore. And I'm not the type of person that seeks to be the center of attention. And yet my first impression in a school setting, in a performance setting, was, wow, she can go on stage and sing like that. Like, that's crazy. And it was just it was a weird time. So that kind of dragged on through elementary school, middle school, high school. And then I was auditioning to go to college. And I had a moment where I realized that's not what I wanted to do. I even had a scholarship that I didn't take. And I moved out to Oregon, and I just wanted to try everything and anything. And I was so excited to be at a university that wasn't a music conservatory. I could take classes in landscape architecture. I took a metalsmithing class, and people thought I was an art major, and I'm like, nope, just doing this for fun. And I took physiology and Shakespeare, and I just took everything because I didn't have a chance to explore. Was there
shame around that?
What do you mean around that?
The nervous laughter, and then what do you mean? No, so you explore all these things, and with this acknowledgement that it sounds like you, in the self-awareness that you had, that you needed to explore these different things. And were you getting feedback from others that was saying that, like, what are you doing? You got to make decisions and figure out, like, or is it something else? Like,
yeah, I think there was a lot of anger around me, like, by me not pursuing classical vocal performance. Like, I was literally training to be an opera singer, which just sounds crazy to me now. At the time, it sounded crazy too. I think choosing not to do something that I was so naturally good at was a really hard decision. And I think there was definitely resentment around that decision. Like, I didn't get to see what else there was out there. I felt like anytime I went on stage and sang an aria, it wasn't for me. I had the ability to go out of my body and do these crazy things. And then I would walk off and be like, well, that's that. And it was kind of damaging in some ways. I spent a lot of time conserving energy to do that. I was very scheduled. So I had a lot of scheduled engagements. I don't know, just things in school, things out of school, groups, private lessons, competitions. It was just taking up all of my time. And I think feeling like that was my worth, I just didn't accept it. And I didn't really try academically. Like, I didn't have the energy. I just kind of coasted along. I don't remember doing homework. I just kind of, I don't know. It's hard for me to think back on that because I don't know what I did. I just was conserving energy because I had to perform after school. I was preparing for something that I felt for other people's enjoyment. I really didn't feel fulfilled. And
you're probably getting all this, like, really positive feedback for something that you didn't really care about.
Yeah. And that was really confusing. It was really confusing. And some animosity. Like, I had a teacher in my high school that I wasn't one to, I don't know, suck up or whatever. And I just kind of showed up, sang, kicked ass, got the parts, didn't really seem to care because I really didn't care. And I felt guilty that I was taking away people's opportunities, or, you know, my music instructor would be very antagonistic toward me. I was not her favorite. And so the support wasn't there. Like, I have a really distinct memory of, I had a piece that was really difficult to play on the piano to accompany. And we had this school-wide competition where we went to some regionals in the state, in Illinois somewhere. And I hadn't given her the music ahead of time. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm doing. And then she was like, I haven't practiced this. You didn't give this to me in time. And then she started to run through it. And then she was saying that I wasn't coming in at the right time. And I'm like, I think I am. And then she was just like, you're going to have to not do this or do it a cappella. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so she kind of threw me under the bus. And I remember it was so awkward. My entire high school music group was behind me, and I had to walk in front and was like, well, you know, something fell through with my accompaniment, so I'm just going to sing this a cappella. And I sang Mozart's Don Giovanni a cappella, and I just tapped my foot when the piano was supposed to be playing, and I would come in, and I remember the judges said that I even came out like a half step sharp, instead of flat, and that I got first place and like all this praise. And I just felt awful. I just felt like it was a terrible experience.
You're calling it in and like you're getting all this like accolades for how you did. I
kind of wanted to fail just to be done with it, but it was just like, I just couldn't not do it. Like I couldn't not do well.
Huh. That's got to be a little bit of a mind twist in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But I didn't have to practice very hard, and I felt kind of useless. I really did. So when I went to college, I didn't tell anyone. I changed my major to undecided.
You can major in undecided? I wish I would have known that.
I mean, well, that's a placeholder. Yeah, that's like, I don't know what I'm doing. What's out there kind of placeholder. So I had a really great time in college. Academically, I tried for the first time. I really did. I don't remember trying hard in school, and I did pretty dang well. And then I had to choose a major, and so it goes. Yeah.
And so you landed in psychology there?
No, I didn't. There
are a couple other stops along the way.
Yeah, I'm hesitating just because this is the whole thing. I'll give a short version if I can.
Okay, and then we'll take a quick break.
Okay. So I think it was my third term. So like I'm on the quarter system in Oregon. I had to choose a major. So I chose landscape architecture. I decided to go to the University of Oregon because the campus is gorgeous and there's so many big trees and plants. And so I did that, and it was hard for some other reasons. I'm not making this a long story short. We'll come back to that if we have time. I decided that I wanted to take some time off. I wasn't able to for parental reasons. I just needed to figure out what I wanted to do. So I was just racking up my gen eds, pretty much breezing through that. And I was like, well, after a couple of years of landscape architecture, I decided maybe I should just do music. And I had audition again. I haven't sung operatically in 2 years and was surprised to get accepted. I did not feel fulfilled in that. And then I went to English thinking I like writing. I just need to get a major. And then it was the canon of English literature. I just, burnt out totally. My health was in really bad shape, mental health, physical health, whole bunch of stuff.
And you were dealing with migraines through all this as well.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. So I took some time off.
Was that helpful when you took the time off?
Yes, I never stopped learning. I read constantly. I got really into physiology when I was going through my pregnancies, and thought maybe I would do something like nursing, and did my nursing prerequisites, and then just really got attached to the neuroanatomy and neurophysiology unit. And that's what started my path towards psychology.
It's a long and winding road.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, let's pick it up where we left off. We will be right back. If you've been listening for a while, how long have you been thinking about joining ADHD Rewired's coaching and accountability groups? Well, you have one more chance to register and receive an invitation for our March 5th registration event. Having the support you need to push yourself to a new level of satisfaction in your life is just a click away. Listen to Marissa from our fall coaching group.
I think my biggest takeaway was something you started saying right in the beginning, and I thought, that kind of sounds dumb. It was, I can do hard things. And I was like, yeah, well, I suppose. But the more we said it, the less dumb it became. And more like, if you look at everybody, we've all done some pretty hard things. So I think that it says so much. And I just found myself telling my 3-year-old that the other day. He really didn't want to pick up his toys, and he just kept whining about it and not doing it. And we stuck it out. It was like 40 minutes of a battle of not doing it. He finally did it. And he said, Mom, I'm so proud of myself because I did not want to do that. And I said, that's really good because you know what's great? We can do hard things. And then I thought of you guys and was like, there it is. Not so dumb now, is it?
Asking for help can be hard. Go to coachingrewired.com and sign up to get invited to our final registration event for ADHD Rewired's 20th season of coaching and accountability groups. Spring sessions begin April 8th, and you can keep your growth going with weekly sessions with the members of our alumni program, which you will get to try out for free when you join our coaching and accountability groups. This is more than ADHD coaching. This is ADHD Rewired coaching. Our next coaching group is already 50% full, so don't wait. Join us for our last registration event on March 5th. Registration is by invitation only, and to get your invitation, go to coachingrewired.com and click on the big green button. Space is limited for our registration event.
If you're thinking about joining this group and it's at the last second, do it anyway. Don't give yourself the time to talk yourself out of it. It's not worth doing. Just join immediately. 2 weeks in and this had already paid for itself for me. It's powerful to find that you're not alone. You're not going to be judged for the struggles you have, and it's going to help you move forward.
The website again is coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. All right, we are back. So through some other courses, you landed in on psychology that got your based on your interest you had in a nursing class on the brain. And now you're at the very end of your undergrad. And, and so from beginning to end, when did you start, like including your taking time off? When did you start? And so how long was what will your undergrad experience be?
So I started in 2006, right out of high school. I tried to go through like an abridged version of explanation. I did go part-time briefly when I was still in landscape architecture in like 2008, 2009. And then in 2010, after going back to music school, and then after, I think when I was an English major, I was looking at my degree requirements, and I still needed to fulfill the requirements for a major. So had I gone to a different university by 2010, I probably could have, like some universities, you can choose your own major. So I would have done some kind of interrelated arts, cobbled together some requirements or something, and graduated in 2010, but that wasn't the option where I was at. So, I just I had incompletes too. And you have like a year to do those.
Those are the worst. I did a semester where I had some incompletes because I had some medical stuff. I had to take a semester off.
Yeah.
And that's where I developed my what I now look at as writing trauma, because it took me an entire semester to write a 3-page paper, and I was working on it like every single day. It was torture. It was.
Well, you were working on it. You were working on it every day. Wow. You're proud of that.
Well, it was a 3-page paper. It was, I was probably trying to like tackle what really would probably have been more appropriate to be like a 30-page paper and consolidate it into, cause I couldn't just pick a simple topic,
Sure.
Yeah.
No, don't make it easy for you.
And that's when I learned the lesson that the due date of whenever you can get it to me is the kiss of death when you have ADHD.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's really, talk about shame trigger. Yes, I'm looking at my degree audit, as they call it, where like all the things you've done, all the classes you've taken, and like the requirements are fulfilled or not fulfilled. And all my gen eds are pretty much done, even in 2010. But I just didn't have the major. That was really a problem. But I had classes that I had an A in or a B in, and I had like an assignment that was big enough that because of migraines, I just couldn't complete at the time. And so I got incompletes and in, a handful of classes over the years. But then I'm just, my schedule's packed. I have all these courses to fulfill the major requirements, and I just could not get to it. So I wasn't working on it every day. And then they turn over into a failing grade, which is just lovely. So when you look at my academic record, which I didn't even want to look, I thought it was horrible. I just felt really awful about it. In 2014, I think it was, I started my nursing prereqs. And I had not really taken science courses before, besides, I think, some physiology. And I went back and looked at my transcript, and I was like, it's not that bad. Like, considering that I have a handful of failing grades in there, I did pretty well, that I was still at like a B average overall. And I just try to give myself a little bit of a break that I wasn't able to do then. So 2014, I was taking, anatomy, physiology, biology, chemistry, and just like kicking ass. Like I just got, 4.2 GPA, really, really devoured the material. I loved it. And I was pregnant at the time. I planned 2 pregnancies, and I thought, I loved being pregnant. I loved learning about what was going on with my body physiology. I felt like I was a novice expert.
How was your pregnancy with all your sensory challenges?
Yeah, something I read about recently was that with estrogen and female ADHD symptoms, that you could have improved symptoms during pregnancy. And at the time, that wasn't something that I was thinking about. I wasn't considering ADHD, but I did not have migraines during pregnancy.
Wow.
And so I thought it was just.
So you're probably just like, I just got to stay pregnant for the rest of my life. And
well, no, I loved being pregnant. I just thought it was such a wonderful time. I felt so sharp. I felt great physically, emotionally. I just loved reading about it. I loved learning the physiology. I'm resisting going into specifics here because I'm just going on a huge tangent. But yeah, I just felt great. And I knew it was such a temporary time. And so I just really savored it, and it got me interested in science and the body process. And that's what led me to nursing. I think in, taking those courses, what I realized was I was just fascinated with, learning about the small players in our kind of human system. And again, just getting really interested in how, we have these cellular components that organize themselves, and then the cells organize themselves into tissues, and those tissues function in organs and systems. And then just thinking about the brain, how somehow that gives rise to these complex cognitive processes. I was just hooked. And so again, long story short, I was speaking with a physiology professor at the time, and he was like noticing that this isn't really applicable to nursing, and mentioned that the U of O has a psychology program and research labs. And I was like, oh my God, am I really going to go back and try to finish out another major? And I took it really seriously. I was like, I'm doing this. And if I decide I'm going to do something, like I'm doing it. So that's fast forwarding to, I had my second baby. I did take some time to just give him the 2 years at home, the investment that I gave my first, just to be fair. But I kept reading about neuroscience, and I had nothing on paper to show for it, which was the most frustrating thing. So, so I did. I went back to the university, and I was like, all right, let's do this. What are the major requirements? Here we go. And I'm pretty much done. I decided to do this honors program. So I have some extra stuff that wasn't necessary, but this term, it's winter term now, and I'm finishing out my courses. And then next term I just have a thesis, and I am done. So it'll be 2020 that I will graduate with my undergraduate degree.
Which started in 2006.
2006. Yep. And a whole bunch of stuff has happened in between. Yeah.
Do you think that the sort of the presence of dealing with lifelong migraine, and so the fact that kind of day-to-day existence was a struggle, that struggle, or that like the perseverance that it would take to keep going, almost just felt like not a big deal? Like all things being relative?
Yeah. I mean, when I was in the darkest of times, just barely functioning, I never gave up. Looking back, like that hindsight perspective now, I mean, I probably was suffering from like depressive symptoms, but at the time I didn't feel like it would get me down. Okay. I think the game changer was finding something that actually treated the migraines.
Pregnancy.
Besides pregnancy, that's a temporary solution, and I took that very seriously, and I only planned like 2 of those.
What was that show? The Durgans or the Duggins? They had like 17 kids or something like that.
Oh, just perpetual state of childbearing. Yeah, no thanks. I felt a lot of. I mean, now that you mention it, when I was home with my, doing the whole like I'm home with the kids thing, I felt a lot of guilt around not feeling fulfilled. Like my mom was a stay-at-home mom. When I left the university, I was always like, I'm going back. I just need to figure some stuff out. I need to kind of baseline this first and, get myself all good to go. And she was like, oh, I loved being a mom. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be a mom. And I'm like, you're just not hearing me. Like there's things I want to do. I just don't know what that is.
Like
and
you
I felt
want to be
so
a mom
much guilt.
And
yeah, I loved being a mom. I took, raising them in those first formative, early years really seriously. And then, just feeling like useless. I mean, I wasn't useless, but that feeling of like, I need to be doing something. What should I be doing right now? Was just constant. And it was just constant irritability, just every day. And I was so fulfilled. I have a wonderful husband. I have wonderful children. I just have cultivated a fantastic life for myself. I just felt so useless and unfulfilled. And that caused me a lot of guilt. And I think making this big shift to not only return to school to finish out in psychology and then just get right, just I've been involved in research this whole time, and to just go right through to pursuing a PhD program has been it just feels like I'm finally doing it. I'm doing it, Eric.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So after your second kid was born, you were then diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
Yeah, after my first. Yeah,
After your first,
I think it was in 2012. I was breastfeeding and was having these really weird symptoms. And again, it's kind of like, where does the migraine, where does the fibromyalgia begin or end?
Because I know it's one of these diagnoses that there's controversy around it, right? Because it's like not this like, it's not like pregnancy where you are or you're not. It's a cluster of symptoms. And my sister has fibromyalgia, and she just describes like always being in pain. And it's like I was talking to her the other day, and she was like, it's like, the achiness you have like when you had the flu. She's like, it's kind of like that always.
Yes. So I think I've always had it. I just didn't know what it was. And for me, because I have migraines, if I move, my head will throb harder. I will feel like I'm going to throw up again. If I lie in a really still position and just get so, I can kind of calm down and sort of manage that. But with fibromyalgia, if you do some yoga, if you go for a walk, if you get yourself moving, it alleviates some of that tension and stiffness and achiness. It really does feel like I'm coming down with the flu every day. And it's one of those things that it makes me feel restless at the same time, because like there's stuff I want to do and I don't have time for this kind of thing. But what's weird, and the thing that got me diagnosed, was I went in and I was like, look, all right, like it starts here. It's like high up on my neck. And then it's kind of like a highway where it's like, I got this trigger point, like, in the base of my neck. And then it's kind of like connected to my shoulder. And then if I stretch my arm out to the side, it goes down my arm to my thumb, but then it's also like down my rib cage. And then I got this spot in my back by my ribs that's just always there. And I can never relieve that trigger point. And then it just goes down to my hips. And it's like this whole thing. And it's like, this makes no sense. Like, why is this connected? And it's kind of like my body's divided into continents, or I saw a massage therapist, and I think she described meridians. I don't know. But yeah, it's just every day humming in the background, just one of those things that I try to ignore. I don't know how else to deal with it. It's really hard to get out of bed in the morning. It's really frustrating feeling like I'm just not well. I'm just, again, constantly conserving energy while feeling restless. And like, there's just things I have to do. And so it's like
you need to be still so you don't get the migraine, but you need to be moving so your body feels okay.
It's very confusing, all these things at once. So once I found something that works for me, I've got this nice triptan. It really does work. If I take it early enough, I know the signs. Denial is a thing of the past. I always carry it with me. So then it's like, okay, great, cool. I'm good. Let's do this. And so I worked really hard. I made excellent grades in physiology and whatnot. But I went to my general physician at my yearly exam, and I was like, look, I cannot concentrate. I can't focus. And this is like 2016. I was getting ready to go to nursing school. I was kind of pumping myself up. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. And she was like, you seem very anxious, and gave me some piece of paper about anxiety. And I was just kind of like, you're not listening. I can't focus. I can't concentrate. Like, I feel like I know what to do. And I feel like, I don't know. There's this disconnect. I don't know how to describe it. And I just felt very unsatisfied. Like I don't feel necessarily anxious in general, unless I can't focus and I can't concentrate and there's things I want to do, then that makes me feel really unsettled and kind of restless.
It's like you can't shift out of neutral.
No. And it's like all or nothing for me. Like if I am into something, like I am all in.
Yeah.
And it's hard to turn that off and it's hard to go to sleep and things like that. Yeah.
So I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to explore what really kind of sent you down the path to seeking this ADHD evaluation. So we will be right back. Support for this podcast comes from patrons, and we have 3 new patrons to welcome this week. Darren J at the $5 level. You will get access to webinars and some extra content. Emily P at the $10 a month level, who has access to audio recordings of our monthly coaching sessions. And Carly P at the $25 a month level, who can join me and other members at that level for a group coaching call on Zoom every month. Our next group coaching call will be on Tuesday, March 24th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I am grateful for every patron who can give what they can. And if you're not in a place to give, you can support the podcast in a non-monetary way too. Share this podcast with someone you know or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you're brand new to the podcast, I want to welcome you. I appreciate you and thank you for being here. And I hope if you find value from the podcast, in time, you'll want to become a patron too. To become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Patreon is Patreon. And thanks. Are you feeling overworked? Never taking a break? Then listen to this Monday's episode of Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb. He will be talking about getting off the treadmill that we all get on that leads to burnout. Check out Hacking Your ADHD this week and every Monday. Join Will as he explores ways that you can work with your ADHD brain to do more of the things that you want to do. Each episode is only about 15 minutes, so go subscribe to the podcast and listen in your car or at home. Go to hackingYourADHD.com for show notes and to easily subscribe to the podcast. And every Friday, check out ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan. Brendan's guests are parents, educators, and experts focused on children with ADHD. Go to ADHDessentials.com to learn more. Both Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials are both part of the ADHD Rewired podcast network. These podcasts are available to everyone, everywhere you consume podcasts. And don't forget that you can join me and the hosts of both of these podcasts, Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials, every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for an hour of live Q&A. Register for free at ADHDrewired.com/events. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. Our next live Q&A is Tuesday, March 10th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Put it in your calendar. That's March 10th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there. All right, we are back. All right, so it was a couple months ago, was it, that you realized that you want to actually seek an actual evaluation? What was that tipping point that kind of got you to that?
Yeah. So I mentioned my son, the 5-year-old. And wanting to take it seriously for him. When he was starting, he's in kindergarten now. When he was starting kindergarten, I wanted him to kind of get ready and spell his name and things like that. And he just couldn't sit down and just those typical kid symptoms. And I feel like having my own kids and observing them, does a few things. It makes me think about what my experience was like as a kid and want to be, a good parent for them, want to understand them and not kind of make these assumptions. Or I think reading about ADHD symptoms, looking out for my kid, it's hard not to almost be parenting yourself, Mm-hmm. I think I have so much patience with my kids. I feel a lot of compassion for them. And that's something that I'm learning to feel toward myself. I mean, self-compassion's one of those things that I need to acquire. It's not something that I have formed a
it doesn't come naturally. It's something I talk about a lot in my coaching groups, how self-compassion is the way forward. Instead of thinking about this idea of, we'll get there once we get some wins under our belt. It's like, no, it's like, that's the thing that's going to help us move forward, is having that real, just deep sense of self-compassion for like acknowledging that this is hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. And so I think there's just a lot of pieces at once. And I feel like it's this messy puzzle, and I'm putting it together without doing the border first. I don't know. So I feel like parenting my kids, parenting myself in the process, while realizing that, my kids are individuals, and I really am cognizant to not assume that their experience is like how mine was, because it's not, because I'm not my parents. It's very different. But I think because I found such a fit in science and research, especially once I moved from nursing to psychology research, and knowing that was a deliberate choice is very intentional. And I am going to be doing this for the long haul. I just realized that I'm trying way too hard. I'm putting in an exorbitant amount of effort because I want to do well, because I enjoy it, but also I am putting in too much effort, and it's exhausting. Just those basic things like organization is something that I work really hard at. So hard, in fact, that people think that I'm an organized person.
I remember the first time someone told me that, like, wow, I'm so organized. And I was like, wait, me? I was like, I had to look behind me to think, because I thought they were talking about somebody else. Yeah, no, I very much relate with that feeling of like, if you only knew.
I'm fooling you. I'm fooling myself. And so here I am, present day, I don't know, 6 months ago, whatever it was. And I'm working as a research assistant in this lab. And I had a graduate student that I work closely with say, you're really organized and you have such an attention to detail that could you help me with this? And at first I'm like, oh God, yeah, of course. And then it quickly was like, wow, this is great. Can you manage this? And I'm like, yes, I can. I will.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah. So most recently, I've been working as a project coordinator for a really complicated social neuroscience experiment where I'm recruiting, I'm sending out emails, I'm answering emails. I have this spreadsheet that's color coordinated with all these little groups, and everyone has to be a yes to be a part of the experiment because you answer questions about one another. It's called a round robin design. And just so many details. The logistics are incredibly complicated. And I was doing it because those are my perceived strengths. And then I got to a point where I was like, this is crazy. I'm able to do this, but I'm working way too hard and this is exhausting. And I can't keep going like this.
I definitely have been there where I recognize that it's something I can do, but at a real cost.
Yeah. So I think things just take me a really long time, transitions, of course, something that I didn't even think was a problem until I started reading about ADHD. And I was like, oh, well, I've got that. And then I really notice how I have these these blind spots where I'm like, where did the time go? Moving from one thing to the other, like it's the time it takes me to walk there, but it's the time it takes me to set up and like, pack up and making sure I have everything. I've got to catch the bus to go there. And it's just like, I pack in so much time for transitions that it feeds into my productivity time. It's just, I can't function like that as a graduate student. Like, so it's just not sustainable.
Have you been finding that the more you're learning about ADHD and the more you're recognizing some of these symptoms that maybe you didn't realize were ADHD, that because of the kind of growing self-awareness, you're just seeing it more and it feels like the ADHD is kind of just, the symptoms are kind of popping up everywhere? Like how was that experience for you as you're learning more and more about it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely my experience. It's definitely true. Once I developed a really good management plan for my physical symptoms, like the migraines, I'm not treated for fibromyalgia, but once I was just feeling well and I could show up, every day, then it made these, what seemed to be, again, I'm not diagnosed yet. So what seemed to be ADHD symptoms that much more apparent. And it's just a really weird experience to notice my limitations and realizing how well I've been masking them and overcompensating, and how much effort it takes to do that once I started reading about ADHD symptoms, I was recognizing them in real time. And that was challenging because I wanted to just notice it and kind of just feel okay with that. And then I would have this emotional response that felt out of proportion. And I'm the type of person that will tamper down the emotions, and I feel like I'm in control of my emotions, and that somehow feels like a strength. I'm trying to let go of that. But the acknowledgement that I'm having what appear to be ADHD symptoms, and then just sitting with it and then feeling the emotion well up, it's just like unmanageable. And I had an experience with a professor this past fall term where it was pretty much a graduate level class, and his teaching style was a lot of verbiage and not using slides and just trying to stay on his lecture train. I realized I wasn't able to listen and write and think at the same time. And because I was applying to the PhD program last term, I wasn't doing my usual overcompensating by reading ahead, by being super prepared for class, where like whatever goes on in class is just supplemental. So like I was there to like learn the material for the first time in my pretty much recent adult education. And the struggle was real. I felt so bad about myself that I couldn't just be your kind of typical student where you just kind of show up, let's see what we're learning today. It's like, usually I would go above and beyond to be prepared. And I had asked a question after class, and it was just one of those nitpicky things where there's multiple questions. It's a multiple part question, and I had answered it up here, but then I didn't reiterate down here in my like verbal explanation. And it was a whole thing. And so I kind of said like, well, I have the right answer, pointing, above the question. It's like, yeah, but we didn't write down here. And I was just so frustrated because it's like, it's not like I don't know it. It's just, I didn't follow like the step, like I made a lot of, silly errors, and I just didn't follow
like
through.
The sequencing and the explanation.
Yeah. And it wasn't because I didn't understand it. It was because I didn't follow the detailed instructions to get every single point in the question. And I just had this overwhelmed emotional response to that. And I felt it coming and I was like, nope, not happening here. I started packing up my stuff. I'm ready to walk out because I stayed after. And he immediately was like, well, don't feel bad. You shouldn't feel bad. Like, you're not the only one that got that wrong. I'm just like, it's not why I'm feeling bad right now. Got other stuff going on. And then he eventually like asked me to like, follow up with him on it. And so I emailed him about it and I decided to do a little bit of exposure and tell him that I am waiting to have an ADHD evaluation and that this course is just kind of challenging because I'm noticing symptoms as they're happening. I'm not finding that I'm able to mask them as well because I'm trying to integrate. And he didn't give me any response. So then I had to go to class every day after that and just act like everything's fine when it wasn't. And it was just one of those things. Did you try to
follow up with him? Just like, hey, did you get my response? Or did he get my email?
I'm trying to think. I feel like there was another email. I had emailed him because I did have a migraine one day and I showed up to class before I was really able to. And without telling him, like I had sunglasses on, I was just, behaving in a way. He had obviously been familiar with migraines and he told me like, oh, migraines are the worst, even before I had said that that's what I was experiencing. But so we had emails, we had talked, but he just literally did not mention that I had said that about ADHD. So it really just made me kind of shut down in that way.
You disclosed, which is totally vulnerable, and then you got a non-response, which just had to make you feel just bad. I mean, beyond vulnerable, beyond like, to put yourself out there and then to not be kind of met with any kind of acknowledgement that's a pretty exposed feeling.
Yeah. It didn't make it more likely to talk about this with other people. And
here you are in a podcast talking about it.
Right. Yeah. And that's,
should we mention the nervousness that you were kind of, displaying before we hit record? No, we don't have to mention that now that we mentioned it.
Because I don't talk about this, clearly.
How's it feeling right now talking about this?
I mean, I did get to talk about it last week when I had my intake for the evaluation. And I don't remember if we talked about it during this conversation, but it's a 3-part series, the intake, the testing, and then the feedback. So that was really the first time I was able to kind of speak openly about it. Because I feel like every day sort of feels like an interview right now. I'm so in the psychology department that the last thing I want to do is reveal something that would make me a less desirable candidate, that would make it less likely for me to be able to go through a PhD program. And I know that that's not the case. I know plenty of people go through, extensive programs when they have ADHD. It's just the little experience that I have talking about it. Like I had a TA that I mentioned that I was waiting for a diagnosis, and just trying to deal with that is really challenging. And she was like, oh, I make stupid mistakes all the time. Like I'm in the same boat. I'm just like, but you don't have
amazing
ADHD.
How often people they're genuinely trying to like be empathetic and helpful. And then just like the minimizing feeling that is being communicated, just like we all deal with that. It's like, well, sure, we all make mistakes, but that's one of the things that's challenging about ADHD to someone who doesn't have it is you can look at any one or even a few of the symptoms that we may experience, and they're relatable because all people have, clusters of these symptoms. But when it's more than just a couple of these symptoms and it happens all the time and in these different, settings, it's, if occasionally being distracted and forgetful and missing details is a normal part of being human, then I think that we are superhuman because we do those things a lot.
Constantly. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that, I think nothing else, if you just look at your experience as an undergrad, I think just there alone, right? It's like it took you 14 years.
On and off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think and I just wanted you to acknowledge the grit and tenacity to not give up, to keep coming back. I mean, that is a real asset that you have and that you're able to show up with. Because I think a lot of people at some point during that journey would just be like, yeah, this school thing isn't for me. And I hope that you can acknowledge and own that as a real win.
Thank you. Yeah. I should give myself more credit. Giving up is never an option. And I always wanted to do something. It's just, if it wasn't the health stuff or just kind of being labeled early and not being able to escape that, just so many factors. And now when I'm so close, it's like, God, do I have ADHD? Like, really? Like, it's just one more thing to figure out before I can do what I want to do. But I mean, really, I think just that exploratory nature and that tenacity and that grit, that's something that I feel like isn't special to me. I hear a lot of that in other conversations on your podcast. I think it takes a lot to not overcome, but to work with this and to make it work for you. And I think a big thing that I am going to begin to really process are what really are my strengths. Like if I think about that, my answers are things that don't really feel relevant, like music. I don't know. I feel like within even that, are you someone who really sort of appreciates order and beauty and kind of harmony even within like people? Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I like how you put it that way. Yeah. Are you trying to resolve any dissonance in communications? Yes. There's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot, and I'm just beginning to tap into it. And this feels like a premature conversation because I'm just getting started on this whole ADHD journey. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing so much of it with us. It's it'd be nice for you to just let us know when you do get the actual results back. It's whether or not, I haven't asked you all the questions, but whether or not you get that indication of ADHD, I think that you've gone through a lot. You've gone through more than what most people would probably ever understand. And I hope that you can take time and have these moments to really acknowledge your true badassery and allow yourself to feel. It's
For many years, I was so good at thinking my feelings.
Yes.
And that catches up with you.
Yeah. And things work until they don't work anymore.
Yes. Yep.
Rationalizing feelings is definitely one of them. Yeah.
And so it may make you good in the field that you're doing, but I also think that being able to, I think it's a skill to be able to turn on the rationalization and intellectualization, but then also to be able to say, okay, I'm seeing the tendency to want to do that. Yeah, I'm going to sit with this feeling, because I think that there is a real wisdom in sitting with the difficult emotions, and not pushing them away, even when they're uncomfortable. But I mean, as far as dealing with stuff that's uncomfortable, I think that you're an expert at that.
I have a lot of practice.
Oh man. And it's, it's the types of practice I'm sure wish you'd never have had to experience. Right. But It is something that you have, and it's part of your story and who you are. So, I part of, why I do what I do is I believe very strongly in the idea of making your message. And just owning it, because you are not the only person who is struggling with the things that you shared. And especially things not just ADHD, but even fibromyalgia. I know that there's a lot of stigma around that, and people who are even just doctors, they're oh, it's not a thing. It's just, and why, it's why just put it because you can't see it on a blood test? It's an experience that I've seen, and talked to many people with ADHD, as well, who have, those combined experiences. And so you may have the gift and the curse of not being, of needing to always prioritize self-care. You don't have the option to say, I have some stuff to do. I'll take care of the self-care stuff later. Because of just who you are, self-care will always need to be number one.
Oh, it's so important for maintenance. Yeah.
It's, so you have an internal reminder system in case you ever forget.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing this, and for sharing your journey while you're sort of in the midst of it, and you're, it's still kind of unraveling. Is there anything else that you want to share before we say goodbye? For people that are waiting for an evaluation, if they're listening to this, especially at this point, they've already found your podcast, which has been wonderful. I think hearing people talk about their experiences with ADHD has been really the thing that has gotten me through the wait period. Because I know it can be hard to find someone that can do an actual evaluation, especially if you're looking for accommodations. They really require that full extensive testing. And then just knowing that you're in limbo, feeling like you're crazy, feeling like, why can't I just get this together? Why do I need to do this? I think hearing people, not just reading about it, but hearing people talk about it. I think so much of the takeaways that I've gotten from your podcast has been the way people talk about their experiences. And there's kind of a common spirit, or, it's been really worthwhile. It's been great binging on it. I look forward to it every Tuesday. Yeah. Angela, thank you so much for sharing your story and spending your time with us here. And we wish you the very, very best as you continue on in your journey.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Angela did have her evaluation, and afterwards she let us know that the diagnosis of ADHD was in fact confirmed, along with traits of autism. So, Angela, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and we hope everyone found this to be helpful. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is adhdrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at adhdrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, adhdrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at adhdrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.